Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth.
Have you ever found yourself watching a movie where you don't much care for the good guys or the bad guys? Where there's just nobody to root for? I had that happen to me recently watching, not a movie, but a documentary series on Netflix. The series is called Wild Wild Country, and it tells the story of what happened when the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh sought to establish a commune in rural Oregon back in the 80s. Now, I had some knowledge of the existence of this fellow and of this cult, but it wasn't something that I followed at all particularly closely. And so, on the plus side, with respect to the series, boy, it was fascinating. It was captivating. I really was interested in it. But what I found interesting was that there really were no good guys. Much of the story, I'd say the bulk of the story, is the story of the battle between the Rajneeshis and first the local residents in Antelope, Oregon, and then eventually state and national authorities as well. But also within the story, a second battle is the battle between the Bhagwan, the actual guru for this organization, and his private secretary, Sheila. And Sheila was sort of the hands and feet of the Bhagwan and was instrumental in the establishment of this particular commune in Oregon. And eventually these two, who had worked so well together, had a falling out and had a battle against each other. And again, you're watching, well, who's going to win that battle? Who's going to win this battle? And I didn't want anybody to win. I don't know that I could give much of a summary of the ideology of even having invested several hours in watching this series, of what it was that the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh actually taught. It was kind of a jumble of basic human potential movement kind of tactics, what was it? Active, I think it's called active meditation, where instead of sitting quiet, people would jump up and jump around while they're doing their meditation. There was also a great, and this may have been what was so appealing to it, a great celebration of sensual pleasure and wealth and prosperity. So that's not the kind of thing that a Christian can be really excited about and say, hey, I want this organization to thrive and prosper. These are not good folks. And the people who are fighting against them from this rural Oregonian place are by and large professing Christians. So why couldn't I root for them? Now keep in mind that this was set in the 80s, and, for many of you, that's, like cowboy days. That's how far back it seems to you. But I lived in the 80s. I remember the 80s. I was around. And, but one of the things that just struck me was the absolute lack of embracing of religious liberty. Now, again, I don't have any quarrel with anybody saying that faith is bogus, that the doctrine is all lies, that this is demonic, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it just seemed like everybody and their brother wanted to use the government to stop these people, to shut these people down. And honestly, I don't think that's right. And I don't think that's right, not because I think that ultimately the Christian faith and this particular cult or any other religion are on equal ground with respect to their truthfulness. But rather it's because I believe that the Christian faith is the true faith that I believe it's not right of Christians to use the power of the sword. That's God's language in Romans 13 to describe the government. It's not right for Christians to seek to use the power of the sword to stop people from their foolish, false religions. There was just this kind of smug Christian, hey, we don't do things like that around here. And so, yes, we're going to scare these people away. We're going to make this thing illegal and that illegal. We're going to sick the naturalization immigration service after these folks. And you had government officials saying, these people are not welcome here. It was something else that struck me as I'm watching the movie, and this happens so often. To illustrate, I'm going to tell you a story. I don't know where he was, but back in the 80s, my father was giving a talk somewhere, and it was about this time that my dad developed an interest in a biblical understanding of economics. It was just not long after I developed that interest, he developed the same interest and started studying it. And he was giving a talk somewhere on biblical economics and biblical ethics. And in the course of the Q&A, someone stood up and raised this objection about how terrible it was that in this particular place, I don't know where it was, wealthy people were coming and buying up all the land. And that was the sum total of the accusation. It was presented as proof that wealthy people are terrible people because they came and they bought up all this land. And my father, God bless him, he would always say, hey, if you can help people think through something just by asking them a question, that's probably going to be more effective than a direct challenge. So he asked this question. He said, was the land for sale? Was the land for sale? I'm not sure how you can get mad at people who offer to buy someone's land and the person who owns the land says, I'll sell it to you for this much, and they make a deal. But that was one of the complaints about these Russians. Oh, they're moving into town, they're buying up all the businesses. You don't say. You mean people are selling them their businesses? Yes. Freely? And you wish they wouldn't? Again, there's nothing wrong with people making private trades to buy and to sell. That's a good thing. So, I raise all this honestly to help us hopefully have a better perspective, especially in light of recent Supreme Court victories. It's very easy for Christians to now say, well, because we got our guys on the bench, we're going to start winning all these battles and we're going to start, exacting our revenge on the left. Now, friends, when people argue that the government should stay out of the abortion question and that Christians are doing badly by asking them to get involved, it's nonsense. Of course we're asking them to get involved. That's the job of the government, is to protect life and property from aggressors, from murderers and thieves. That's what the government is for. And its failure to protect the unborn is a wicked, horrible thing. And they need to be called and to do what God calls them to do, to protect life. But that's not the same thing as using the sword to punish people simply because they don't agree with us theologically. You understand what I'm saying? So that, for instance, I don't know, a group of Muslims want to build a mosque. What's the Christian response to that? Is the Christian response to go to the government and say, look, this Islam is wrong, it's false, it's a wicked, evil, false religion. And by the way, it is a wicked, evil, false religion. And because of that, we're going to ask you not to give them a building permit. How is that any different than when the left says we're not going to let Chick-fil-A come in here because they aren't supportive of gay rights? Well, here's one difference. One difference is Chick-fil-A people are right and the Muslims are wrong. I'm happy to affirm that. But here's what's consistent. In each case, the parties who are asking the state to intervene are failing to do unto others as they would have them do unto them. It is precisely because Jesus calls me to treat others as I would want to be treated that I want to defend the right, the legal right, or the moral right to have the legal right to build a mosque, to build a place of false worship. That's where I'm standing. Now, I could be wrong. I'd love to hear. I mean, if you got an argument that says, "Hey, here's why a Christian should not allow Muslims to build mosques," I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear how you're going to distinguish between the Muslims and the Mormons and the Roman Catholics and the Church of Christ. How are you going to decide who gets to build the building? How are you going to let the government decide who gets to build the building? But I'd love to hear from you. And I'd love for us to recognize, I'd love to have my position recognized, even if I'm wrong. Again, I could be. But I'm trying to build my position on do unto others. I'm trying to build my position on what Jesus laid down for us as our moral and ethical duty. I'm not doing it because of the First Amendment. I'm not doing it because I'm an American. I'm not doing it because I'm a political conservative. I'm saying it because I'm a Christian. But again, if you're a believer, you got another perspective, let me hear from you. You can send an email, as always, to hellorcjr@gmail.com. hellorcjr@gmail.com. Or if you're listening to this via my website, rcsprouljr.com, you can put a comment beneath there or on YouTube or wherever you want to do it. So that's where I stand. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsprouljr.com. And join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.